Okay, so take two of the Energized Empowered Women Summit. We are so happy to be here for a second time. We've tried with StreamYard, it didn't quite work. And so this is part of being resilient and flexible. And in the past, I would have freaked out. Going, and self-flagellated myself with all these judgments. And today I'm happy to laugh with Jenny Brockis, who has beautifully consented to come and share her wisdom with us. She's just so beautiful. She's been such a support to me. I listened to a podcast that she was being interviewed on, and the way she spoke was absolutely beautiful, and it touched my heart. And I just had to reach out to her and say, would you be interested in speaking in the Energized Empowered Professional Women Summit, where we are helping women just to thrive again, and here we are. So thank you, Jenny, for coming today and being part of this amazing group of women that we have gathered around us to help everyone today. So welcome to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. It's such a delight to be part of this event, and I think what's so impressive is how you have curated and collated, if you like, 17 extraordinary and different women to talk about this really important topic of burnout and what we can do better to look out for ourselves, for those that we care about, and also to look for ways that we can prevent it from happening in the first place, because I think that's the ultimate aim here.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely correct. And I would love to introduce Jenny. Oh, wow. Who is Jenny Brockis? So who is this beautiful woman on screen with me? She's a board certified lifestyle medicine physician and workplace-based health consultant, specializing in mental well-being, psychological safety, and burnout prevention. Author, speaker, trainer, coach. And after burning out as a GP and losing her practice as a consequence, she was left wondering what had contributed to this. And she has now dedicated her life so that others will never have to endure the same thing again. And her work revolves around boosting cognitive health and mental performance so that you can fire up without burning out, which I thought was fantastic. I love that. And her mission is to add her voice to bring about much needed changes required that will create great places to work. So thank you, Jenny, for your work. And she's the author of Thriving Mind, How to Cultivate a Good Life. And it's the finalist for the 2021 Australian Business Book Awards in the personal development category, and longlisted for the UK Best Business Book Awards as well in 2021. So she's got quite a few other books that she's written, and which are they look absolutely amazing, and I'll have to delve down and read into them. They're all on the website for the summit. Go into there, they're under books, and absolutely phenomenal how to get them and how to buy them. And she'll be also talking. She's also, I think you're giving a book chapter as well for part of that. So yeah, thank you so much, Jenny, for all of that. So let's dive deep into this conversation. Let's get started. And so, Jenny, we alluded a little bit to how you got into helping people with burnout. So we would love to hear your story and just really connect with who you are and why you are doing what you're doing.
For sure. So as you've shared, I was a GP. That was what I was trained to do. And I set up and developed a very healthy thriving general practice here in Perth, West Australia, which I ran for a number of years as the principal. I had a number of associate doctors and allied professionals to help me run the business, and all was well until it wasn't. I think, and I know you have a number of other doctors on this summit, there are a particular group of people who are at probably highest risk of burning out. And certainly the research shows that it is the people that care the most, who are the most conscientious, the most diligent, the most perfectionistic, sometimes those with a little bit of imposter syndrome, who always go the extra mile because they want to be of service to others. And they don't see it as any extra burden to do a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And the issue is that unless you've got somebody else to call it out when you're actually overextending yourself, that's when we place ourselves, particularly if we're entrepreneurs, business owners, high achievers, because we don't know when to stop. We've lost sight of enough. And that's exactly what happened to me. I had signed up to become a business owner. I really was so proud of what I'd created. I gave everything to my business, to my work. I probably gave a little bit too much, if I'm honest. And I put work before everything else, including my husband and my children. And I don't feel very proud saying that, but that was the reality. Work came first. I'd been brought up with a very strong work ethic by my parents. And so I'd always been driven to succeed. And burnout, when it occurred for me, was something that built up slowly over months. It wasn't something that happened overnight. And it's an individual experience. Nobody will have had burnout exactly the same way I did. But I think we often share similar eventualities.
Yep.
I lost a lot of weight. I lost 10 kilos. I was starting to experience more or heightened anxiety. I've always been quite an anxious person, but I was getting panic attacks. And being a doctor, I said, this is a panic attack. It's not going to kill me. I'll just carry on without sort of pausing to think, that's not quite right, Jenny. Maybe you should be doing something different here. Nobody in my practice spoke up. And on reflection, I wondered why. And I think it's because I was the boss. And maybe people didn't feel comfortable. Maybe they thought somebody else would say something. And I fell off that cliff edge one Friday afternoon when I'd set up an appointment to go and see an osteopath because I had chronic headaches and neck pain and shoulder pain. And I tried all sorts of other modalities like acupuncture and physio, and nothing had helped. I wonder what that was all due to. So I found myself in an osteopath's office who was delightful, charming man. And within about 5 minutes, I'd collapsed in a heap on the floor, out cold, which I was very embarrassed about because I thought, what's going on? So I came round and he said, are you okay? And I said, well, I'm sure I'm fine. I'm fine. We always tell ourselves we're fine. Grabbed my handbag, jumped in the car, went home, and never stepped foot in my practice again.
Wow. Because
I was complete. I'd reached that tipping point of complete physical, mental, emotional exhaustion. I was unable to function. And that's not much fun. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Not everybody who experiences burnout will get to that stage. But I had been in denial for a very long time. And people say to me, well, what could you have looked out for, Jenny? Well, I couldn't have looked out for anything because I was in complete denial. I expected to be busy. I expected to push myself hard, and if not harder, because I was the boss, I had a business to run, et cetera, et cetera. And it was, to be expected to always be this busy, this stressed, this exhausted. And I'd told myself that story so many times, I'd started believing it. And that's what led to my downfall, if that's what you want to call it.
Wow. That's, that's really hard hitting, and to actually come to that level and that realization. And how did you break out of it? I mean, like I know a few people who have collapsed and like how long did it, like, the first question is, how long is this going to last for? But
Yes,
you know, type A personality.
yes.
But then,
Well,
like, what did you do, like, and how long did it take? Like, this is to give people an idea. It's not an overnight thing.
yes, yes. Well, I expected to be fine by Tuesday, because
Of course.
that particular Friday was the beginning of the long weekend.
Yep.
So I thought, I'm just a bit tired. I'll just have a quiet weekend at home. I'll be fine for Tuesday morning, which of course did not happen. I remember reading the book, My Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolte Taylor, she was a neuroanatomist who experienced a massive stroke. And she was like me. She said, well, I'm a very busy woman. I haven't got time for this. I've got to pick myself up and get back to it. And she took 8 years to recover from her stroke. I didn't take 8 years to recover from burnout, but it did take nearly 2 years.
Yep.
It was 1 year of healing where I had to sort of basically learn how to function again. And then the second year was really more about this self-discovery and exploration, because I thought, well, what the heck am I going to do now? I knew I couldn't get back into general practice because the risk was too great that I would fall into the burnout syndrome again. I recognized in myself my personality would push me forward.
Yep.
And I have had subsequent milder burnout. So I know bit of a risky case. So the second year was about really reflecting on sort of who I was, what I stood for, what I wanted to do differently. And that's what led me to reskill as a lifestyle medicine physician and to set up a whole new career. Nothing like, being a high achiever and a perfectionist wanting to do the next thing, of course. But that's what eventuated. But I think what's important is that for everybody who experiences burnout, there will always be a different outcome. I mean, it's multifaceted. We know that multiple things contribute to its development, and there's no single solution to its recovery either. And there's been some great research in this area. And I know you've been in contact with Nick Petrie,
yes,
who's done some remarkable work in looking at what the outcomes from burnout can be. And in his work, he's recognized that there are a significant number of people who recover quite well and do okay.
Yep.
There's a group who recover but are never quite themselves again and are at risk of relapse. There are those who fall into a significant hole and develop a form of post-traumatic stress disorder, which can take a very long time to work through. And there are others that experience post-traumatic growth. And I would put myself in the latter. Although it was painful, although it was long lasting, and I was very grateful that I had insurance to cover me, because I mean, taking 2 years out of your work life is an expensive option. But as a result, I changed enormously as a person, and hopefully I think for the better. I'm kinder to myself, more compassionate to myself and towards other people, because I think somebody who's very perfectionistic is often quite judgmental of themselves. I was the biggest self-critic out there, but I was also quite demanding of other people, including my staff. Because I had set these really high standards that I expected myself to stand up to, but I also expected everybody within my sphere to do the same thing. And that's not fair. We're all different.
Yes, absolutely. And coming to that understanding too is a huge thing, I think, for all of us as well, because it's also self-compassion, not only for ourselves, and then that self-compassion then expands to everybody around us.
Yes.
It's so, like, you've worked a lot with people in corporate and in the workplaces, and you're a big advocate for that. It's pretty much like Sally Clark, and both of you just big advocates for this. So why is burnout almost like a badge of honor in the workplace? Is it is it real? Why are so many people developing it? That sort of
It is very real.
Mhm.
There's been a bit of controversy around it, especially in the last few years, but I think we've now come to accept that it is a real thing. I mean, World Health Organization defined it for us very helpfully a couple of years ago, even though I don't completely agree with their definition. But anyway, I think it started off when we all wore that badge of busyness. Everybody was so super busy. I'm busy, and you had to be busy, otherwise you weren't really trying. And so we all polished up our little badges of busy and sort of played comparisonitis. I'm busier than you, therefore I am more important or doing more worthy work, or whatever you like to talk about.
Mhm.
But I think from that, we morphed into the stress pandemic, where everybody was super stressed. I'm so stressed. Everybody was in every conversation was telling you not just how busy they were, but how stressed they were as a consequence. So there was some recognition that stress was actually becoming a big issue in the workplace, especially. And then we started to see the fallout from that, which was the development of more and more people burning out. And that was happening well before the pandemic. But COVID was a game changer in that it accelerated and amplified everything that wasn't working well in work. And I think the experiment where we all ended up working from home online for many hours contributed to the rising level of psychological distress and burnout, because the statistics show that on average, people were working an additional 2 hours every working day, which
Wow.
is, yeah, I know, it's mad, right? I mean, why would we choose to do that? I mean, there are a number of reasons why we ended up working so darn hard. I think it was trying to make up and to show our team and our bosses that we were being diligent, because they couldn't see what we were doing all the time.
Yeah.
So we were overworking. And from a physiological point of view, we know that overwork doesn't work because it causes increased levels of stress, increased levels of stress hormones, and ultimate burnout. So that's been something that's building up. And the other thing I think we've got to really consider is that while the big effect of COVID has passed, we are now in this living with COVID era. We forget that we're not over it yet. We're not done with COVID. We're living with it. And there's still an enormous amount of emotional processing that we're doing in our heads to cope with this aftermath, if you like, where we are still feeling really tired, really overwhelmed, and just over the COVID pandemic, the economic situation, the rising cost of everything, the European war, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's so much we've had to cope with in the last few years. And this has also been contributing to, it's not a lack of resilience. And I get quite cross when people say, oh, you just need more resilience training. No, you don't. We're super resilient. We've just lived through a pandemic. It's about understanding that resilience is not something that you either have or you don't have. It's not a test of endurance. It's those things that we do on a daily basis that sustain us so we can be the best version of ourselves. And if you're somebody who's very committed to your work, dedicated to the cause, bit of a work addict, where you put work first, you sometimes lose sight of what those other activities are that actually keep things sustainable. Because burnout is really just a mismatch of the demands that are being put on us, either by ourselves or other people, and the resources we have to deliver. We've just got to get smarter about recognizing the difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. That's actually quite a really good way of explaining what's been happening over the last few years and how we've just evolved, and then COVID's just amplified that for us, which is interesting. I think sometimes things happen in the world as much as it was not the best thing in the world, but it amplified the situation and where we need to move forward to. So, you know, I would love to hear from you, like if burnout's not our fault, where we have all these different factors that are contributing to burnout, and then the social situation and all the world situation. So why is there so much stigma and shame attached to it? You've worked a lot with like high achievers, so
Yes.
it'd be great, because I've got friends and I've got clients who are high achievers, scientists, you know, education teachers, medical professionals.
Yeah.
So why is there so much stigma and shame attached to it, and so they go into like almost a denial of it?
Well, because burnout is never on anybody's radar, and especially not somebody who is a high achiever, who's out there to do good, to do well. We strive to succeed. And so that failure piece, or that sense of failure, hurts particularly. As I shared, I came from a background, my family were, you know, very strong in, well, you've got to do something useful for the world. You know, we want you to study medicine and become a doctor, because then we can be proud of you. They were very proud of me, and they supported me through my training in medical school, which I'm enormously grateful to them for. But they didn't get what burnout was. They didn't understand what had happened. They couldn't figure out why I had let go of a thriving medical practice. And their comment was, oh, that's a shame. What a waste. Which didn't actually make me feel much better when they said that. And I knew it was coming from a place of ignorance. They didn't understand.
Yep.
And my attempts to explain it sort of fell on deaf ears. They didn't really want to understand it either. And the other thing that I think contributes is, particularly in certain professions, and I'm highlighting the medical profession here, doctors are very good at judging other doctors. They're fairly intolerant of weakness, and no lack of moral fiber or anything like that. And so I hid what had happened to me for a long time, for many years. In fact, I never spoke about it, certainly not to any medical colleagues, because of that deep sense of shame and guilt that I'd let everybody down. I'd let down my patients, I'd let down my staff, I'd let down my family, you know, I'd let down everybody. And I was lost as a consequence. Things have changed, it's improving, but there is still that fear of judgment from our colleagues. So I think that certainly in my instance played a huge role.
Wow. Yep. And it's good for everyone to realize that you are not alone in this, and that because it's just a societal thing, a community thing, that it's okay to feel that shame and to feel that. But also knowing, as what we had in one of our talks with Devin, that to come to that realization and that acceptance that this is where we're at, and how do we move forward with love, with compassion, with ourselves. And that's completely what you have done for yourself.
For sure.
And so what do you think needs to change in the modern workplace? You've highlighted some of the things, like you know, attitudes of people that you work with, and of people that are supervising you, so to speak. I like to use that word, or your bosses, so to speak. So what needs to change, and what are you campaigning for at the moment?
I'm campaigning for better understanding, because there is still a lot of misunderstanding about what burnout is or isn't. It frustrates me when I hear from people who are clearly burning out, and they share that their manager or their boss has told them that they're depressed and they just need to toddle off down to their GP and get a prescription for antidepressants. wrong on every level. It's about understanding that you can't fix burnout overnight. It is a process. It takes time, obviously, for different people. But I think it needs a three-pronged approach. The first prong is definitely what we do for ourselves, because personality does come into this. And I think we've already alluded to a certain group of people who may be at high risk.
Yep.
And I think it's important to recognize that self-care is an important facet of maintaining health and well-being, but no amount of self-care or yoga or meditation is going to protect you from burnout if you are feeling a bit better from doing those things for yourself and then going back into that toxic environment, because burnout is an organizational problem or challenge, if you like. It's not an individual, not an individual's fault. And that's why I think we need to maybe reconsider the definition as it exists, because when you read it out and it says, you know, it's the result of chronic exposure to stress in the workplace that has not been mitigated or adequately addressed, it comes across as it's the fault of the individual. And it fails to acknowledge that really, if you've got a workplace where there are a number of individuals burning out, that should be a huge red flag that there's something not quite right with the organization's culture. And the other thing is to recognize that it's not the leader's fault on their own either. Because, I mean, let's face it, leaders are burning out in droves just as much as employees. We've seen political leaders like Jacinda Ardern, Nicola Sturgeon step down because they're burnt out. But I think if you take the sort of three-prong approach where you look at what an individual can do for themselves, especially if they're in the particular risk group of being exhausted and engaged, the people who love their work, you know, they're so passionate about it. I was always passionate like that. And that made me blind to the fact that I was overdoing it. So it's making sure that you are looking after yourself as best you can by doing those things that lift you up. It's about engaging in team care, where everybody is looking out for each other, making it safe for people to speak up or speak out, to say, hey, and it's just like, you know, talking about mental health. Are you okay? I've noticed that, you know, you seem a bit stressed. You seemed a bit, you know, overwhelmed with everything. Do you want to have a chat? Is there anything I can do to help? I think if we get better at building that psychological safety piece, that is going to make a huge difference to the amount of burnout that's currently being experienced in the workplace. Because I think the worst thing that can happen is when we get what's called the bystander effect. Where people can see what's happening. My staff saw what was happening, but nobody chose to say anything. It was my patients who actually said to my receptionist, is Jenny all right? Does she have cancer? Because I looked terrible. Yeah, it wasn't a good look. So I think, you know, having the courage to speak up and say to somebody, look, I care about you, something's not right. And it does, and to do that, whether you're the boss or whoever, is what matters. Because anybody is at potential risk of burning out. Nobody's immune. Nobody's immune. And the third thing I think is where each workplace puts together a burnout prevention strategy. I mean, I live in West Australia, which is very prone to bushfires. And, you know, the whole of Australia is prone to bushfires, let's face it. And in many small country towns and even big towns, we have bushfire prevention strategies. We need the same thing for burnout. Where everybody has input, everybody can contribute to what they can see, because we all see different things. We look at the job design, we look at the roles and responsibilities, we look at how things can be structured better to support each other, that, and to put that in place and to implement it, to review it, and to keep on keeping on, because the workplace is evolving so fast. So
Mm.
it's not just sort of set and forget. But
Yep.
if you've got a strategy in place, you can measure it, you can see what's happening, and you can go from there. And I think then we've got a chance of making burnout redundant. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. Oh, that would be great. And it just shows just an evolution of care in our spheres of life. So
Yep.
we then are behaving the same way at home in a loving way. We're behaving the same way. We don't put on another hat, another cloak to say, hey, we're going to work, so we're going to behave differently. No, it's all about coming together as a community, as an individual, whether we're working or whatever we're doing, we're going to behave the same. We're going to care for each other the same way. And to be able to talk about it, I think that's, we have a lot of tools here, but as you mentioned, if we can speak about it with someone and speak to someone about it, it's really important to get out. It's almost like a release of energy when you do speak to someone about this. Is for some reason it really helps with your whole nervous system, and it actually does work, and they've looked at it very closely. So thank you for those insights and your good work on promoting and campaigning for these changes. And it is so needed right now, and that's why I'm so excited to be able to have you here to speak about that. You have provided some absolutely amazing bonuses, like there's heaps of them. They're all on the website for the summit. And if you could just bring us through some of those bonuses. I know you've got this amazing webinar thing that you're having for all the live participants.
Sure. So I've given a free chapter from my latest book, Thriving Mind, which is a chapter relating to burnout.
Mm-hmm.
I've given a top 12 tips on how to prevent burnout. And also I'm running a free webinar for all participants of this summit to attend. And if you can't get to the live because of time zone differences or whatever, you can get the replay. Just sign up and register for it like you did for this summit. And I'll be spending sort of 45 minutes going through the prevention strategies that I've sort of highlighted here, but going into much more detail and practical tips that people could take away. So I'm going to be hosting that in a couple of weeks.
Oh, sounds amazing. I'll have to register myself.
Be delighted to have you there, Vanessa.
that would be absolutely so much fun. And thanks for all those beautiful bonuses that you've provided. Again, it's all on the website, so go ahead and have a look. And also on the website has all of Jenny's Instagram, socials, LinkedIn, and yeah, all the socials are there. And so get in contact with her. What do you have available on the cards for the viewers, like besides that, the live workshop that you're having for the people in the summit? Do you have I think I saw like you have a Thriving Mind Academy,
I do, yes. I run an in-house, and I have a public program for people who want to learn how to thrive more in work and life.
Right.
So that's available on the website as well if people are interested to go and explore that.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so that's all available there. Jenny's just really prolific in a lot of writing and a lot of blogs, and it's just such a pleasure to connect with her work. And I've just got into LinkedIn and I'm going, wow, this is so cool. It's amazing. I love it. Thank you so much. Final question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the one thing you would say to yourself, to your 8-year-old self who's having a moment? Could be a moment of sadness, could be a moment of joy. And you see her, she's just standing there and she's looking at you. What would you whisper in her ear right now?
I would tell her that she is enough, and what she is experiencing is fine. whether it's what we call a positive emotion like happiness or joy, or a negative emotion like sadness or frustration. All our emotions are points of data, and they're really helping us to understand what's going on internally as a result of what's happening externally. So it's really just that we're noticing what's going on in our environment. So it's okay to have those feelings, and it's okay to explore what's contributing to them. So I think that's probably what I'd say to my 8-year-old self.
Oh, thank you. That's so beautiful. And we can never hear enough that we are enough. Just to remind ourselves, because sometimes it is a little bit overwhelming with what is happening around us. And
Sure.
and we just discussed through different cycles of our lives. So to be able to accept that with curiosity and compassion would be just be so beautiful. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Sure.
So thank you everyone for listening, for joining in with this conversation, and for helping us raise awareness of how important it is to recognize, to communicate, and to help each other with are you okay? How can I help you? How can I just listen to you? How can I hold this space for you? So if you know anyone who this video and this conversation would help them a lot, please feel free to share it. It is here for you as a resource, as a recording forever. And we are always here for you. You know where to reach us. Much love, and thank you for tuning in to the Energized Empowered Professional Women Summit. I'm Vanessa Mollard, and thank you, Jenny, for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.